I ate alone on Father's Day until the delivery driver handed me my son's confession by mistake. Before I begin my story, I just want to say thank you for listening as I pour my heart out. Let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is. I love hearing from you. If you haven't already, please hit the subscribe button. It helps me more than you know. And if you'd like to share your story with me, feel free to email it. I'll drop my email in the comments and description below. Now, let me tell you what really happened. Father's Day used to be my favorite holiday. Not because of the ties or the cologne, but because it was the one day of the year my family seemed to remember who I was before I became an afterthought. When Robert was younger, he'd wake me up with burnt toast and coffee so strong it could strip paint. When Emma was small, she used to draw me pictures of us fishing together, even though we'd only been once. Those were the days my house felt like a home. This morning, the silence was louder than usual. I woke up early, shaved with my good razor, and put on my Sunday shirt just in case they stopped by. I even set out the good plates, the ones with the navy trim that only came out twice a year. I'd grilled burgers the night before and left them in the fridge, ready to reheat. I told myself, maybe they're coming later. Maybe breakfast turned into lunch or lunch into dinner. I wasn't about to give up hope before noon. By 11, I'd already brewed a fresh pot of coffee. I laid out paper napkins. I put 3 patties on the serving plate. One for me, one for Robert, and one for Emma. I didn't bother preparing one for Sandra. I knew better than to expect her. I called once, just to check. The phone rang 5 times before it went to voicemail. I didn't leave a message. He knew what day it was. I wasn't going to beg to be remembered. By 2 o'clock, I gave up waiting at the table and brought my plate into the living room. I sat in my recliner, facing the window, watching neighbors come and go with balloons and gift bags and plastic containers full of potato salad. I saw Mr. Peterson's son pull into the driveway across the street with a cooler bigger than his torso. He wore a button-down shirt. That's how you knew he respected his old man. I stared at my coffee, lukewarm now, and told myself maybe there was traffic, or maybe they had a last-minute emergency, or maybe they just forgot. No. Sandra wouldn't let them forget. That woman runs the house like a military operation. If anything, it was on purpose. I ate my burger in silence. I didn't cry. I refused to. I was not going to shed tears over being invisible. Not today. I've lived long enough to know when you're no longer the center of your child's world. You become background noise. The kind of love you once gave is something they grow out of. But I kept my dignity. I held that fork like it was a scepter and ate every bite like it was served at a 5-star restaurant. Around 4, there was a knock at the door. I blinked. My heart jumped. For a moment, I thought about Emma and how she'd been coming by every Sunday, helping me organize my workshop and listening to my old Navy stories. I thought about the house I'd almost lost and how it now sat secure in a trust with her name on it. I thought about forgiveness, not the easy kind that erases consequences, but the hard kind that makes space for growth. You want to come by for dinner Sunday? I asked. I'm making beef stew. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Then I heard him crying. Yeah, Dad. I'd like that. Good. Come at 6. And Robert? Yeah. Bring dessert. Something you made yourself. He laughed through his tears. Apple pie. Apple pie. That Sunday, Robert showed up at 5:45 with a slightly lopsided apple pie and red eyes that told me he'd been crying on and off all week. He looked thinner, older, but somehow more like the boy I'd raised. We didn't talk about the facility right away. We talked about his job, about the separation proceedings, about how strange it felt to cook for one person after so many years of marriage. We talked about my weekly veterans meetings, about the book I was reading, about Emma's college applications. It wasn't until we were eating his pie, which was pretty good, if I'm being honest, that he brought it up. "Dad, I need to tell you something about that day. The day you got the delivery." I set down my fork and waited. "After you called me out, Sandra was furious. She said something about how you were being manipulative, trying to make us feel guilty. And for a moment, I almost believed her." He paused, his voice getting thick. "But that night, after she went to bed, I sat in my truck and ate one of those leftover burgers you'd grilled. The ones from the delivery bag." He looked at me directly. "And it tasted like home. It tasted like being loved." And I knew I'd just thrown that away to avoid a difficult conversation. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. "That was your choice to make, son. And this is your choice to make too." "What choice?" "Whether you want to be the man who threw love away, or the man who learns to receive it again." We started having dinner every other Sunday after that. Slowly, carefully, like two men learning to trust each other again. Robert never asked about the accounts, never mentioned the facility again. He seemed to understand that some bridges, once burned, leave better foundations when you build new ones. One evening, about 6 months after our first reconciliation dinner, we were sitting on my back porch when he said something that surprised me. "I drive by the old storage unit sometimes." I looked at him. "Yeah. The one where Sandra made me put all your dad's Navy stuff, your mom's china, all those photo albums. Remember? She said they were taking up too much space in our house." I remembered. It had stung at the time, watching my family's history get boxed up and carted away. "I went and got it all back," he said quietly. "It's in my apartment now. Every box, every picture, every medal. I've been going through it slowly, remembering things I'd forgotten." "Good. There's a photo of you teaching me to change oil when I was 12. I'm covered in grease and grinning like an idiot." He smiled. "I used to think those memories were burdens. Now I realize they were gifts. And now." He gestured around my small porch, at the simple metal chairs and the single hanging plant I'd been nursing back to health. "Now I know the difference between keeping things and treasuring them." A year after I'd reclaimed my independence, the veteran storytelling group had grown into something beautiful. We'd expanded our meetings, added a writing workshop and a legal aid clinic for seniors facing financial abuse. I'd become a regular speaker, sharing my story and mentoring other older men who were struggling with family manipulation. One Saturday morning, the group leader pulled me aside after our weekly meeting. "Harold, I've got something to show you." She led me to a wall near the library's entrance where they'd hung a plaque. It read, "The Harold Thompson Senior Advocacy Corner, in honor of a man who showed us that wisdom isn't just knowing what to give, but knowing when to take it back." I stared at that plaque for a long time, feeling something shift in my chest. Not pride, exactly, but a deep sense of rightness. Like puzzle pieces finally clicking into place. "You didn't have to do this," I said. "Yes, we did," she replied. "Because what you did, standing up for yourself, it wasn't just self-preservation. It was education. You showed other people that dignity doesn't have an expiration date." Emma ran up then, still clutching the backpack from her Saturday volunteer shift at the library. "Grandpa. Did you see? You're famous." I knelt down to her level. "What do you think about that?" She considered this seriously, as only 19-year-olds can. "I think it's good," she said finally. "Because now other people will know that being old doesn't mean being powerless." That evening, I called Robert and told him about the plaque. There was a long pause before he spoke. "I'm proud of you, Dad." "For what?" "For teaching me that love isn't about holding on. It's about knowing when to let go, and when to hold tight." "Which one are you doing now?" "Holding tight," he said without hesitation. "To the things that matter. To the people who show up. To the lessons you taught me, even when I was too stupid to listen." 6 months later, Emma graduated with honors and got into her first-choice college. At her graduation party, held in my backyard, at my insistence, she stood up to give a speech. "A lot of people talk about their heroes," she said, looking directly at me. "Athletes, celebrities, politicians. But my hero is my grandfather, who taught me that sometimes the most courageous thing you can do is refuse to disappear quietly." The small crowd applauded, but I was focused on Robert, sitting in the back row with tears in his eyes. After the party, he helped me clean up the yard. "She's going to be something special," he said, stacking chairs. "She already is. Just like her grandfather taught her to be." "Which grandfather?" I asked, smiling. "Both of them," he said. "The one who raised me, and the one who refused to let me forget who I was supposed to be." As I write this, 2 years have passed since that delivery driver handed me the wrong envelope, or maybe the right one. Emma is thriving in college, calling me every week with stories about her classes and her friends. Robert and I have rebuilt something stronger than what we had before, a relationship based on mutual respect rather than obligation, on earned trust rather than assumed loyalty. The house on Maple Street is secure, its ownership protected in a trust that no one can manipulate or steal. My financial accounts are safe, monitored by people I trust rather than people who see me as a source of income. Sandra moved back to her mother's house after the divorce. I heard through mutual acquaintances that she's working at an insurance office now, posting significantly less on social media about family values and respecting your elders. Sometimes I wonder if she learned anything from what happened. I hope she did, for her sake and the sake of any other elderly family members she might encounter. But that's not my story to write anymore. My story is about a man who learned the difference between being generous and being taken for granted. Between loving unconditionally and accepting disrespect as the price of love. I learned that foundations are meant to be strong, not invisible. That a father's sacrifices should be honored, not exploited. That sometimes the most loving thing you can do is refuse to enable someone's worst behavior. The tools in my garage are organized now, ready for projects with Emma when she comes home for breaks. My financial records are clear and transparent. My will is updated and ironclad. And me? I'm living in the same house but breathing in a bigger way. I'm surrounded by people who choose to be there, who value my presence, who understand that respect isn't a boundary, it's a foundation. Every Sunday, when Robert comes for dinner with dessert he made himself, when we sit and talk about everything and nothing, I remember what it feels like to be seen. Really seen. Not as a bank account or a convenience or a burden in my own story, but as a man who built something worth keeping. They tried to write me out of my own narrative. Instead, I became the author of a better one. I am Harold Thompson. I am 73 years old. I almost disappeared quietly until a delivery mistake gave me the courage to fight back, and it was the best accident that ever happened to me. The foundation they tried to make invisible became the bedrock of something beautiful. And that foundation ain't going anywhere. Ever. At the veterans meeting last week, a new member joined us, a 78-year-old man named Frank whose daughter had been trying to convince him to sell his house and move in with her family. He'd been resisting, but felt guilty about it until he heard my story. I thought I was being selfish, he told the group. But listening to Harold, I realize I was just being honest about what I need. After the meeting, he approached me privately. "How do I start?" he asked. "How do I protect myself without destroying my relationship with my daughter?" I handed him James's business card. "You start with a conversation," I said. "But you have that conversation from a position of strength, not weakness. You protect your assets first, then you protect your heart." 6 months later, Frank called me with an update. His daughter had been upset initially, but eventually came around when she realized he wasn't rejecting her help, he was defining the terms of it. They'd worked out an arrangement where she visited him twice a week and helped with errands, but he remained in his own home with his independence intact. "You were right," he said. "The conversation was easier when I knew I had choices. These are the stories that matter now. Not the money I saved or the house I kept, but the people I've helped find their own voices. The fathers and grandfathers who've learned that love and boundaries can coexist. The families who've discovered that respect doesn't diminish affection, it enhances it. Last month, I started writing a book. Not just about my experience, but about the experiences of all the men in our group. Stories of financial abuse, emotional manipulation, and the courage it takes to stand up to the people you love most. The working title is, The Day I Was Supposed to Disappear, A Father's Guide to Staying Visible. Emma is helping me edit it. She says it's important for younger generations to understand that aging doesn't equal helplessness, that wisdom includes knowing when to say no. Robert read the first draft and called me afterward. "Dad," he said, "I hope someday I'm brave enough to be half the father you've been." "You already are, son," I told him. "You just needed to remember it." The delivery driver who brought me that envelope probably has no idea what he set in motion. A simple mistake, bringing the wrong papers to the wrong house, that saved a man's life and dignity. But maybe it wasn't a mistake at all. Maybe it was just time for the truth to find its way home. And the truth is this: I am Harold Thompson, and I am not disappearing. Not today, not tomorrow, not ever. My house is mine. My money is mine. My story is mine. And anyone who thinks they can take that away will find out exactly what this old sailor is still capable of fighting for. Maybe they had come after all. Maybe Emma begged to come see me and Robert folded. I smoothed my shirt, brushed the crumbs off my lap, and walked to the door with slow, even steps, pretending I wasn't holding my breath. When I opened it, it wasn't Robert. It was a young man in a brown delivery jacket, holding a large catering bag in one hand and a white envelope in the other. "Delivery for Thompson," he said. I blinked. "That's me." "Great. This was scheduled for today. I was running late. Sorry about that. Here's the food, and this came with it." He handed me the warm bag and the envelope. I was confused, but I thanked him anyway. Maybe Robert ordered food and had it delivered as a surprise. He'd done that once before, sent a pizza when Emma got the flu and couldn't visit. Maybe this was his way of making up for not showing up. "Enjoy, sir," the man said, then walked back to his car. I brought the bag into the kitchen and set it down. The smell hit me first. Grilled steaks, baked potatoes, asparagus. My stomach growled. I opened the bag and found containers all labeled for 3 people. I smiled a little, even if it was a sad smile. Maybe this was their peace offering. A small one, but still. Then I opened the envelope. That's when everything stopped. It wasn't a card. It wasn't a message from Robert or Emma or even Sandra. It was a letterhead from a retirement facility, a high-end one, the kind with spa packages and wood floors and scenic walking trails. At first, I thought it was a mistake, but then I saw the details. "Welcome to your future residence at Sunset Manor Assisted Living." Below that, my name, Harold Thompson, and below that, my son's email address, robert.thompson@outlook.com. The form detailed a confirmed move-in date. It listed my known medications, my dietary restrictions, and a preferred payment method. Payment method linked to my checking account. My account. My legs went numb. I gripped the counter to keep from falling. I read it again, slower this time. This wasn't a brochure. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a finalized welcome packet, a confirmation. I wasn't just being forgotten. I was being removed. My son had submitted the paperwork. My daughter-in-law must have helped him. They planned to send me away quietly, without asking, without warning. While I sat alone on Father's Day, they were finalizing my disappearance. I stood there for what felt like an hour, staring at that letter. My knees locked, my hands frozen on the countertop. My name, my medical details, my bank account, all printed out in neat rows like I was a piece of furniture being moved. Not a father, not a human being. Just a problem to be quietly solved. I picked up the catering bag again. My hands trembled as I pulled out the packing slip taped to the side. It confirmed the order. 3 meals, 1 for Robert, 1 for Sandra, 1 for her mother. Not me. I wasn't even an afterthought. I looked back at the retirement home letter. There was a sticky note attached at the top. It was handwritten in Sandra's sharp, rushed script. Here's the packet for Rob to sign. Once it's official, he'll be out before summer. Thank God. I couldn't breathe. That note wasn't meant for me. It wasn't meant for anyone who cared about me. It was meant for the man I raised and the woman I tried so hard to get along with. And it came into my hands by sheer accident. A single moment of clumsy fate. One delivery driver handing the wrong envelope to the wrong man. Or maybe the right one. I sank into my kitchen chair. The house was silent, but it felt loud now. My heartbeat echoed in my ears. The hum of the refrigerator sounded like a warning. For so long, I'd ignored the signs. The way Sandra talked over me during dinner. The way Robert stopped calling unless he needed something. The way they discouraged Emma from spending too much time here. It all made sense now. They weren't waiting for me to get sick. They were planning around it. I remembered a conversation from last fall. Robert asking if I'd updated my will, suggesting we streamline my finances. At the time, I thought he was just being responsible. I even thanked him for looking out for me. I didn't know he was looking to take over. And Sandra, she always hated this house. Said it was too old, too cluttered, not good resale material. I should have known when she offered to help me declutter last Christmas that she was really sizing it up. I stood and walked into the hallway, down to the hall closet where I kept the fireproof box. I opened it and pulled out my financial folder. Inside, bank records, property deeds, insurance policies. I flipped through until I saw the account number listed on the retirement packet. There was my checking account. I'd given Robert access 5 years ago when I had surgery on my knee. Just in case of emergencies, I told myself. Just in case. He must have used that to initiate the deposit for the home. I wasn't sure what hurt more, that he was doing it, or that he was doing it behind my back. Not even the decency to sit me down and pretend it was for my own good. They were going to spring it on me like a birthday gift. Happy Father's Day, Dad. You're being evicted from your life. The coffee maker on the counter began to gurgle. I hadn't even realized I'd started another pot. I shut it off and poured myself a cup, more for the motion than the comfort. I didn't drink it. Instead, I walked to the living room and sat down in my recliner. The same recliner where Robert used to sit on my lap when he watched cartoons. Where Emma once curled up to hear my stories about when I was in the Navy. Where I sat and waited every year for someone to remember that I mattered. I placed the envelope beside me. Then I picked up the phone. I called Robert. It rang 4 times before he picked up. His voice was casual, distracted. Hey, Dad. Sorry I didn't call earlier. Been a busy day. How are you? Busy, of course. I'm fine, I said, my voice quiet. Just had some unexpected mail delivered. There was a pause, then a shift in his tone. Oh, what kind of mail? A welcome packet, I said. From Sunset Manor Assisted Living. Silence. I believe it was meant for you, but the delivery driver gave it to me. More silence. I could hear him breathing. Then came a fumbling noise, like he was covering the mouthpiece, followed by a muffled, he knows. I waited. Look, Dad, he finally said, we were going to talk to you about that. No, Robert, you weren't. We were just trying to figure out the best way to help. Sandra thought. Sandra doesn't know me, and you clearly don't either. His voice cracked just slightly. It's not like that. I stood slowly, holding the phone in one hand, the envelope in the other. You sent me food like I was a stray dog. You cancelled Father's Day. You took my money, and now you're making plans to remove me from the home your mother and I built. The home I let you grow up in. He sighed. You're making this dramatic. No, I'm seeing it clearly for the first time in a long time. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just said, don't come here again. I'll make arrangements myself. And I hung up. My hands were steady. I looked around my home and made a decision. I was not going to be erased quietly. The phone didn't ring again that night. Robert didn't call back. No apologetic texts, no explanation, nothing. I suppose once you've been exposed, there's not much left to say unless it comes with shame or decency. And my son seemed to have neither. After I hung up, I just sat there for a long time. The welcome packet lay beside me in the recliner like a snake that had slithered into my house without warning. The more I stared at it, the clearer everything became. This wasn't a decision made overnight. This was a plan. A quiet, coordinated betrayal, tucked beneath polite smiles and missed phone calls. While I grilled burgers and watched the mailbox for holiday cards, they were counting down the days until I could be tucked away, labeled, and stored somewhere with emergency buttons and activity schedules and soft rooms meant for fading men. Well, I was not fading, and I would not be stored. The next morning, I rose early. I didn't cry. I didn't waste time asking why. I packed away the leftover food, tossed the cold coffee, and went straight to my file cabinet. There were still a few things I had left untouched. Things Robert didn't have access to. My lawyer's number was one of them. I called him before I even had breakfast. James Mitchell. We served together in the Navy back in '68. He'd gone off to college after discharge, then law school, and now had his own small practice not far from here. I hadn't spoken to him in years, but he picked up on the second ring like we were still bunking together on the USS Franklin. Harry Thompson, he said, haven't heard from you in too long. What's going on? I need to change my will, I said. Today. He didn't ask why. Just told me he'd be by that afternoon. By noon, he was in my living room with his briefcase and a stack of fresh papers. I poured him coffee, told him everything. What Robert had done, the nursing home, the financial betrayal, all of it. He didn't blink. That's elder fraud, he said. You want to file a claim? No, I said. I want to make sure he never touches another dime of my money again, and I want the house safe. We spent 2 hours going over my documents. I updated my will. I revoked his power of attorney. I changed the name on all my accounts to a living trust with James as co-executor. I transferred ownership of the house into the trust and had James notarize it all. It felt like sealing bricks over a door someone else tried to sneak through. When we finished, he looked at me with those sharp lawyer eyes and asked, "Do you want him to know?" I shook my head. Not yet. Why? Because I'm not done watching them reveal themselves. Later that day, I heard from Emma, my granddaughter. 19, soft-spoken, always watching, always listening. I hadn't heard from her in months. Not since Christmas when she sat next to me during dinner and didn't say a word. I'd assumed Sandra had gotten to her too. That maybe she'd been told to keep her distance. But now she was calling me. Her voice was quiet. "Grandpa, are you okay?" I took a breath. "Why do you ask, sweetheart?" There was a pause. Dad and Mom were arguing. I overheard something about you being mad about a delivery. I didn't answer right away. I wanted to ask her if she knew. If she'd been part of it. But I stopped myself. Emma wasn't like them. She still had her own heart. I found something they didn't want me to see, I said. And I think I found out the truth about how they see me. She didn't say anything. Then she whispered, I think I already knew. That's when I felt something crack. Not pain, but relief. Someone in that house still had a conscience. I want to come see you, Emma said. Whenever you're ready, I told her. The door's open. But just you. All right. Okay. She showed up 2 days later. She'd grown taller. Her hair was longer. She looked like a woman and a child at once, eyes full of guilt and something else too, resolve. She sat on the same couch where the welcome packet had landed days earlier. She looked at the coffee table and saw the envelope still there. I heard Mom say you were overreacting, she said. But I knew it wasn't nothing. I handed her the papers. She read them slowly. When she finished, her hands were shaking. She lied to me, she said. They both did. I didn't respond. I just watched her process it all. Grandpa, she said finally, what are you going to do? I've already done it, I told her. I changed everything. They can't touch anything now. Not the house, not the money, not me. She looked relieved, then ashamed. I'm sorry I didn't say something sooner, she whispered. I knew something wasn't right. I just didn't know how to help. You helped just now, I said. We sat in silence a while. Then I made her tea. We drank it together like nothing had changed, except everything had. That night, I slept peacefully for the first time in years. Because I wasn't helpless. I wasn't forgotten. And the house they wanted to steal, it still had its owner. Me. It's strange how a home can feel entirely different once you stop being afraid of losing it. The walls hadn't changed. The furniture hadn't moved, but everything in me had shifted. After Emma left that evening, I walked from room to room in the quiet, pausing in doorways, touching the trim, the wallpaper, the edges of my life. I'd spent 48 years in this house. I'd laughed in it, grieved in it, grown old in it, and for a brief moment, I'd let myself believe someone could just come in and take it from me. Not anymore. The next day, I stood out on the porch with my coffee and watched the neighborhood wake up. Mrs. Franklin across the street watered her rose bushes. A man in a yellow jogging suit walked his beagle past the mailbox. It was ordinary, but peaceful. For the first time in weeks, I wasn't waiting for anything. Not for calls, not for explanations, not for the other shoe to drop. Then I saw Sandra's minivan turn onto the street. It pulled up in front of my house and parked crooked as usual. She stepped out in her cream blazer and flats, sunglasses perched like armor. She didn't have Emma with her, just her purse and a paper folder in one hand. I didn't invite her in. She walked up the porch steps stiffly, clearly rehearsed. She stopped just short of the door, probably surprised to see me standing there calm and unmoved. Harold, she said, forcing a smile. Can we talk? You've got 3 minutes, I said, and sipped my coffee. She cleared her throat. I think there's been a big misunderstanding. Robert and I were only trying to do what's best for you. You forged my medical information and initiated a transfer to a facility without my consent, I replied. That's not a misunderstanding. That's a betrayal. Her smile didn't falter, but her neck flushed red. We thought we were helping. No, I said. You thought you were getting rid of me. She held up the folder. The home is beautiful. You would have had a private room, a garden, weekly activities. We only wanted to give you comfort. I stared at her. You want to talk about comfort? Comfort is eating breakfast in your own kitchen. Comfort is choosing when you go outside, when you rest, when you speak. Comfort is freedom, not polished isolation. Her hand twitched. We didn't mean for it to feel like that. Then why did I find out through a delivery mistake? I asked. Why wasn't I given the respect of a conversation? She had no answer. I let the silence stretch. Finally, she said, "Look, Harold, Robert is upset. He said you locked him out of the accounts. Is that true?" "Yes," I said. "And the will and the deed and the trust. All of it." She blinked, stunned. "You can't do that without telling him." "I can," I said, "and I did, because it's mine. And because I finally remembered who I was before your husband tried to make me feel like a burden." Sandra's mouth opened, then closed. She stepped back like she was ready to regroup. "I don't know what Emma told you," she added. "She didn't tell me anything," I said. "I told her." Sandra's jaw tightened. She turned to go, then hesitated. "You're going to regret this." "No," I said. "But you might." She walked off my porch without another word. I watched her drive away, calm and sure. That afternoon, I called James and had him draft a letter to Sunset Manor, formally rejecting any and all arrangements made in my name. I sent copies to my primary physician and the state licensing board. I wasn't just protecting myself. I was leaving a paper trail. No one was ever going to use my age as a weapon again. 2 days later, Emma came back. She brought me a small potted plant she'd picked up from the hardware store, a little cactus that didn't need much water. She wore no makeup, no pretenses, and hugged me like she meant it. "Mom's furious," she whispered. "I know," I said. "Let her be." We sat on the back patio together. She talked about college plans, about how her friends were all obsessed with social media and drama, and how no one seemed to care about anything real. I told her about her grandmother, how she used to plant vegetables in the yard and talk to them like they were children. How we once danced in the kitchen barefoot after getting our first mortgage. How I held Robert when he had pneumonia so bad I thought he'd stop breathing. "He wasn't always like this," I said softly. "I know," Emma replied. "But he is now." She told me she wanted to spend more time here, that something about this place made her feel grounded. I told her I'd always have space, that she didn't have to wait for a holiday to come home. She looked at me, eyes full of tears, and said, "You're the only adult in my life who tells the truth." That night, I wrote a letter. Not to Robert, not to Sandra, to myself. I wrote down everything I remembered about my life, my strength, my fears, my dreams. I wrote about the day I became a father, the day I became a widower, the day I became forgotten, and the day I remembered myself again. Then I folded it and placed it in the top drawer beside my bed. Because if anyone ever tried to rewrite my story again, I wanted my version to be the one that survived. The next few days passed quietly, and for once, I welcomed the quiet. No more voicemails from Robert. No surprise visits, no sneaky paperwork arriving at my door. Just me, my workshop, my coffee, and the peace that came from finally putting a stop to the storm they had been stirring behind my back. I tended to my tools that morning, organizing my workbench for the first time in months. The sun felt good through the garage windows, and the breeze carried the smell of fresh-cut grass. I wasn't thinking about betrayal. I wasn't thinking about revenge. I was thinking about how free it felt to stand in my own garage and know without a doubt that it was still mine. Then I heard the car. It wasn't Sandra's minivan. It was Robert's old pickup, the one I helped him buy years ago when he couldn't afford the down payment. It pulled into the driveway slowly, like it didn't quite know if it was welcome. He stepped out looking smaller than I remembered. No polo shirt this time, no confident stride, just jeans, a wrinkled t-shirt, and the look of a man who finally realized his father wasn't the fool he thought he was. I stood at the edge of the garage and waited. He walked up to the driveway but didn't enter the garage. "Dad," he said. "Can we talk?" "You've been talking for weeks, Rob," I said. "Just not to me." He looked down at his shoes like a child caught with his hand in the cookie jar. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said. "I really thought it was for the best." "No, you thought it was easiest for you." He looked up, guilt plain on his face. Sandra pushed it. You know how she gets. She said you were starting to slip, that it wasn't safe for you to live alone. I raised an eyebrow. What did I slip on, Robert? The PIN code I gave you access to, or the will you never read but assumed would benefit you? He didn't answer. Don't blame your wife for the choices you signed your name to. I was scared, he said. We've got Emma's college coming up, the mortgage, all the bills. It's all so much. And I just thought maybe it was time to start thinking ahead. So you planned a future that didn't include me? I said. Behind my back. He took a breath. I'm sorry. I didn't say anything. He reached into his back pocket and pulled out an envelope. I brought this. I didn't move. It's a letter, he said. Not from me. From Emma. That made me pause. I walked down 2 steps, took the envelope, and opened it right there in front of him. It was handwritten, no formatting, just raw words. Dear Grandpa. I know things have been awful lately, and I feel like I should have said something sooner. When I found out what they were planning, I didn't know how to speak up without them shutting me down. I was scared. But after I saw you last week, I wasn't scared anymore. You're the only one in this family who has ever made me feel heard. I don't care what they say. I know you're strong and I know you're still sharp and I know they were wrong to do what they did. I love you. I'm proud of you, and I want to spend more time with you if you'll have me. Love, Emma. I folded the letter slowly and looked at Robert. She's a better person than both of you, I said. I know, he whispered. I nodded toward the driveway. You can go now. He looked like he wanted to argue, but he didn't. He turned and walked back to his truck. When he drove away, I didn't feel triumphant. I just felt tired. Tired of men who shrink when things get hard. Tired of women who smile while they bury you. Tired of pretending forgiveness is automatic. Back inside, I placed Emma's letter in my drawer beside the one I wrote myself. I sat down, exhaled, and closed my eyes. Later that afternoon, James stopped by to finalize the last piece of paperwork. He handed me the new title for the house, now secured under my name alone, immune to any future power grabs. You did the right thing, he said. Most people would have ignored the signs until it was too late. I almost did, I replied, until a stranger handed me the truth in a paper envelope. James smiled. Funny how fate works. Before he left, he asked me if I had any final wishes he should record, any legacy instructions beyond what we already covered. I nodded. I want Emma to have the house when I go, I said. Not because I owe it to her, but because she showed up, because she asked questions when the others just made decisions, and because she still knows how to love with her eyes open. James wrote it down. Done. That night, I pulled out my recipe box, the one I hadn't opened in years. I flipped through cards covered with flour dust and little grease stains. Beef stew, cornbread, apple pie. I wrote a new one. Title, Emma's First Sunday Dinner. Ingredients, 1 granddaughter, 1 kitchen, 1 memory that matters. I placed it on top, because from now on, I would cook for people who chose to stay, not those who plotted how to make me disappear. The following Sunday, Emma came over with a grocery bag and an apron. She stood on my porch looking more grown-up than I remembered. Not because of makeup or clothes, but because of the way she held herself, eyes steady, shoulders square. She was no longer a child caught between parents. She was choosing sides, and she chose mine. You ready to cook? She asked. I've been ready since 1985, I said, opening the door wide. We made beef stew from scratch. She cut the onions too thick and spilled flour on the counter, but I didn't care. She laughed at herself, wiped her hands on her jeans, and asked questions like she actually wanted to learn. I watched her stir the pot while humming to the radio. And for a moment, I forgot what month it was. I forgot about the envelope, about the betrayal, about Robert and Sandra and their retirement home scheme. All I saw was her. When dinner was done, we ate together at the kitchen table. No fancy plates this time, just two regular bowls and mismatched glasses. The sun poured through the window like an old friend. We didn't speak much while we ate, and we didn't have to. Some silences are a blessing. After we finished, she helped me wash the dishes. She stood next to me, shoulder to shoulder, our hands wet and wrinkled in the soapy water. "Grandpa," she said softly, "are you really never going to talk to Dad again?" I dried a bowl and set it on the rack. I didn't say never, but forgiveness takes more than an apology. It takes change. I don't think he knows how to change. That's not my responsibility, I said. My job was to raise him. What he does with what I gave him, that's on him now. She nodded, but I could tell it still sat heavy in her chest. You love him, I said. And that's okay, but don't let love blind you to the truth. People who love you can still hurt you, and people who hurt you don't always deserve a second chance just because they share your blood. She looked at me with those clear eyes and said, "That's why I'm here." That night, I showed her the workshop. The tools were organized. The moon was low and wide, casting silver across the workbench. We sat on the porch swing and rocked slowly as the night settled in. I told her stories about her grandmother, how she used to hum while folding laundry, how she fell off a stepladder once and landed in the flower bed, cursing up a storm until I handed her a glass of iced tea. Emma laughed until her stomach hurt. It was the kind of night I thought I'd lost forever. Later, after she left, I went to my room and opened the drawer where I kept the two letters, hers and mine. I reread them both, one written in fear, the other written in love. Together, they told the full story. And then I did something I hadn't done in years. I wrote a new letter to myself. Dear Harold. You are not what they called you. You are not old and in the way. You are not confused. You are not a burden. You are the root. You are the keeper of stories. You are the man who remembered himself just in time. Don't forget again. Not ever. I folded it and placed it with the others. The next morning, I made coffee and sat at the dining room table with the newspaper. Not the digital kind, the real one. I circled an ad for a veteran storytelling group at the local library, Seniors Welcome. Bring your voice, your truth, your experience. I smiled. Later that week, James called me. You sure you want to do this? He asked. I am. He clicked his pen on the other end of the line. All right, I've updated the will. Emma inherits the house, the savings, the rights to your memoirs if you ever write them. I'm already working on the title, I said. How's this, the day I was supposed to disappear? He laughed. That'll get some attention. Good. Let the world see what happens when you try to bury a man who still has fire in his bones. On Saturday, I saw Sandra's minivan pass my street again. She didn't stop this time. Maybe she'd finally realized I wasn't going anywhere. Or maybe she knew she'd lost the battle she never imagined I'd fight. Either way, she drove on. And I stayed right where I belonged. In my house, in my power, in my name. Not Harold the patient. Not Harold the dependent. Just Harold Thompson, father, grandfather, survivor, and the man who ate alone on Father's Day, only to uncover the truth and make sure no one ever erased him again. 3 months later, I got a call that surprised me. It was Robert, but this time his voice was different. Quieter. More genuine. Dad, I've been going to counseling, he said without preamble. Sandra and we're having problems. I didn't say I was sorry. I didn't say I was glad. I just listened. I've been thinking about that day with the delivery. And the facility. And how we treated you. His voice cracked a little. I was so caught up in trying to manage everything, in trying to be the responsible son, that I forgot you raised me to be better than that. I sat down in my recliner, still listening. I know I can't fix what I did. I know I hurt you in ways that probably can't be undone. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. I see how wrong I was. There was a long pause. I don't expect forgiveness, he continued. I don't expect anything. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what I lost. Not just access to your accounts, I lost my father because I was too proud and too scared to see what was right in front of me. I sat there for a long time, listening to him breathe on the other end of the line. Part of me wanted to hang up. Part of me wanted to tell him it was too late. But mostly, I was just tired. Where are you living now? I asked. A rental apartment downtown. It's not much, but it's honest. I'm paying for it myself, working extra hours to cover everything without Sandra's income. And how's that treating you? He laughed, but it wasn't bitter. Hard. Really hard. But it's the first time in years I've felt like myself. Like the person you raised me to be. I thought.